Jin wiped the sweat from his palms as the transport shuttle docked with the massive research station. Through the small porthole, he could see the green and blue swirled surface of Kepler 442b spinning slowly below them. This was it. His first real assignment as a senior engineer, and possibly the most important terraforming project humanity had ever attempted. The airlock hissed open, and Jin stepped into the station's main corridor. The artificial gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth normal, making each step feel like a small bounce. He adjusted the strap of his equipment bag and tried to look more confident than he felt. "You must be Jin," came a warm voice behind him. He turned to see an older man with graying hair and kind eyes approaching. "I'm Dr. Park, your supervisor. Welcome to Station Aurora." Jin bowed politely. "Thank you, sir. I'm honored to be here." Dr. Park chuckled and gestured for Jin to follow him down the corridor. "No need for such formality. We're all family here, especially when you're living in a metal can floating in space for months at a time." They walked past observation windows that offered breathtaking views of the planet below. Jin had studied Kepler 442b extensively during his training, but seeing it in person was entirely different. The continents looked almost Earth-like, except for the unusual purple vegetation that covered most of the landmasses. "The atmospheric composition is our biggest challenge," Dr. Park explained as they walked. "The oxygen levels are just slightly too low for human comfort, and there's an excess of nitrogen compounds that make the air taste metallic. That's where our atmospheric specialist comes in." They entered a large laboratory filled with holographic displays showing complex molecular structures and atmospheric readings. At the center of it all stood someone Jin had only seen in briefing videos, a Zalathi scientist working intently at a quantum computer interface. She was tall, probably close to 7 feet, with an elegant build that reminded Jin of the ancient Korean paintings of celestial beings his grandmother used to show him. Her skin had a pale blue tint that seemed to shift slightly in the artificial lighting, creating subtle patterns like ripples on water. Most striking were her eyes, large, silver, and incredibly expressive. "Nara," Dr. Park called out, "I'd like you to meet Jin, our new atmospheric engineer." She turned toward them, and Jin felt his breath catch slightly. There was something almost otherworldly about Jinho's eyes fluttered open to darkness. The throbbing pain in his chest told him he was still alive, though he wasn't sure if that was good or bad news. The last thing he remembered was his ship spinning out of control, alarms screaming as he crashed through the jungle canopy. A soft, rhythmic sound reached his ears, something like humming, but deeper, more resonant. As his vision adjusted to the dim light, he realized he was lying on something soft in what appeared to be a cave. Strange luminescent crystals embedded in the walls cast a gentle blue glow across the rocky surfaces. Then he saw her. Kira sat nearby, her massive frame, somehow managing to look graceful even in the cramped space. Her forearms moved with surprising coordination, 2 lower hands carefully cleaning a wound on his shoulder, while her upper arms supported his head and neck. Each movement was deliberate and gentle, nothing like the brutal efficiency he'd expected from a warrior. "Easy," she said softly in accented Korean as he tried to sit up. Her voice was deep but soothing. "Your ribs are broken, 3 of them." Jinho winced as pain shot through his chest. "How do you know Korean?" "Your people aren't the only ones who study languages," Kira replied, her silver eyes focusing on his face. "I've been watching human settlements for years, learning." She reached for a bowl of what looked like crushed leaves mixed with water. The smell was sharp but not unpleasant. "This will help with the pain," she explained, offering him the mixture. Jinho hesitated. Everything about this situation went against his military training. Never trust the enemy, never show weakness, never let your guard down. But as he looked at Kira's face, he saw something he hadn't expected, genuine concern. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, accepting the bowl with shaking hands. Kira's lower hands continued working on his wounds while she considered his question. "Your ship was burning. You were trapped inside, calling for help. I couldn't just leave you there." The herbal mixture tasted bitter, but immediately began to dull the sharp edges of his pain. Jinho watched in fascination as Kira used her forearms with the skill of a trained surgeon. Her lower hands applied some kind of healing paste to his cuts, while her upper arms adjusted his position to make him more comfortable. "You're a medic?" he asked. "All Thane females learn healing," she replied simply. "We are warriors, yes, but we also preserve life. It's, how do you say, balance." Jinho had read intelligence reports about the Thane people, but they had focused mainly on their combat capabilities. No one had mentioned they were also healers. Looking at Kira now, he could see both sides of her nature, the powerful warrior who could crush enemies, and the gentle healer who carefully tended his wounds. She stood up, her head nearly touching the cave ceiling, and moved to a natural shelf where she kept various supplies. Jinho noticed how she moved, each step deliberate and quiet, despite her size. When she returned, she carried fresh bandages and another bowl of medicine. "Sleep now," she said, her upper hand smoothing the makeshift pillow under his head. "Your body needs rest to heal." "What about your people?" Jinho asked drowsily. "Won't they be angry that you're helping a human?" Kira was quiet for a moment. "Some will be, but I follow my own path." As Jinho drifted off to sleep, he heard her humming again, that deep, soothing sound that seemed to vibrate through his bones. For the first time since his crash, he felt safe. It was a strange feeling, being protected by someone who should have been his enemy. In his dreams, he wondered what other assumptions about alien species his people had gotten completely wrong. 3. Days had passed since Jinho woke up in the cave, and he was beginning to understand just how patient Kira really was. Every morning she would sit beside him with the same calm expression and repeat simple words in her native language. "Veltar," she said slowly, pointing to the glowing crystals on the cave wall. "Veltar," Jinho repeated, his pronunciation clumsy. Compared to her fluid speech, "Better," she nodded encouragingly. "Light, it means light." Jinho smiled despite the lingering pain in his ribs. Learning Thane was harder than any language he'd studied before. The sounds seemed to come from deeper in the throat, and some words required a rumbling undertone that he couldn't quite master. "Yet your turn," Kira said, switching to Korean. "Teach me something new." "Okay," Jinho thought for a moment. "Gomap samnida." It means thank you, but more formal, more respectful. Kira tilted her head, considering. When she repeated it, her accent was thick but understandable. "Gomap sumnida, I like this word. It has weight to it." "Exactly," Jinho said. "We use it when we really mean it." As Kira prepared his morning medicine, grinding herbs with a smooth stone, Jinho found himself curious about her people. The intelligence reports had painted the Thane as savage raiders, but everything he'd experienced contradicted that image. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Always," she replied, not looking up from her work. "The war reports say, your people attacked human colonies, but he struggled for the right words. "You're nothing like what they described." Kira's hands paused in their grinding motion. When she spoke, her voice carried a sadness he hadn't heard before. "My people did fight humans, yes, long ago, but not because we wanted to." She added water to the crushed herbs, creating a paste. "We were hired, mercenaries for the Zentari. The Empire, they promised us new worlds to settle if we helped them push back human expansion." Jinho felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cave's temperature. "What happened?" "We realized too late that the Zentari were using us. They wanted us to weaken both ourselves and humanity. Then they would sweep in and claim everything." Kira's upper hands clenched into fists, while her lower hands continued working. "My grandmother was the war chief then. She called for withdrawal from all conflicts. That must have been a difficult decision." It was. Many Thane disagreed. Some left to continue fighting as individuals. Others, like my clan, chose isolation. She began applying the herbal paste to a cut on his arm that was healing slowly. "We came here, to worlds far from the wars. We wanted peace." Jinho winced slightly as she worked, not from pain but from the implications. "So when my ship crashed, you were the first human I'd seen in over 10 years, Kira confirmed. "I almost left you there, the safer choice for my people." "Why didn't you?" She was quiet for a long moment, her silver eyes focused on treating his wound. Because you were crying for your mother as you died. Even in a language I barely knew then, a mother's name sounds the same. The cave fell silent, except for the gentle bubbling of a natural spring in the corner. Jinho felt something shift in his chest that wasn't related to his broken ribs. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for what my people did to yours." "And I'm sorry for what mine did to yours," Kira replied. "But we're not our people's choices, are we?" That evening, as Kira hummed her low, soothing melodies while preparing dinner, Jinho found himself truly relaxed for the first time in months. The sound seemed to vibrate through the cave walls, creating harmonics that made his bones feel warm. "That song," he said. "What's it about?" "Growing things," she said simply. "Plants, children, hope. Things that take time but are worth the waiting." As he drifted off to sleep that night, Jinho realized he was beginning to understand more than just her language. He was starting to see the person behind the warrior, and it was changing everything he thought he knew about enemies and allies. The rain had been falling steadily for 2 days, creating a gentle drumming sound against the cave entrance. Jinho was finally able to sit up without help, though his ribs still ached with every breath. He watched Kira as she worked on repairing a tear in his uniform jacket, her 4 hands moving with practiced efficiency. "You don't have to do that," he said. "It's probably beyond saving anyway." Kira looked up from her stitching. "Waste nothing, my mother taught me that." Her voice caught slightly on the word mother, and she quickly returned to her work. Jinho had noticed these small moments over the past week, times when Kira would mention someone from her past and then go quiet, as if the memories were too heavy to carry for long. "Tell me about her," he said gently. Kira's hands stilled. For a moment, Jinho thought she wouldn't answer. Then she set down the jacket and moved to sit facing him, her massive frame somehow managing to look vulnerable. She was fierce. "Kira," began, her silver eyes distant, "not just in battle, but in everything. She could make plants grow in dead soil, calm angry warriors with just her voice, and she never backed down from what she believed was right." "She sounds amazing." "She was." Kira's voice grew softer. "She taught me that strength without compassion is just cruelty, that healing hands are as important as fighting ones." Jinho waited, sensing there was more she needed to say. "The raiders came 3 years ago," Kira continued. "Not military, just criminals looking for easy targets. They thought our settlement would be defenseless because we'd withdrawn from the wars." Her upper hands clenched into fists. "They were wrong about defenseless, but they came at night when most of our warriors were hunting." The rain outside seemed to grow louder in the silence that followed. "My mother, my younger brother, my infant niece. They were all in the family compound when it happened. I was on patrol, checking the outer boundaries." Kira's voice became barely a whisper. "I heard the explosions, saw the fires. By the time I got back—" She didn't need to finish. Jinho could see the pain etched in every line of her face. "I'm sorry," he said, the words feeling inadequate. Kira nodded, wiping at her eyes with the back of one hand. "I tracked down every raider who was there that night. It took me 2 years, but I found them all." Jinho felt a chill at the quiet intensity in her voice. This was the warrior side of her that the intelligence reports had described. "After that, I came here, alone. I told myself it was to honor their memory by living peacefully, but really—" She paused, struggling with the words. "Really, I was just afraid to care about anyone again. Until you found me bleeding in a crashed ship," Jinho said quietly. "Until I found you bleeding in a crashed ship," she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the rain. Finally, Jinho took a deep breath. "I lost someone too," he said. "My sister Minji. She was a medic on the transport ship Harmony." Kira's eyes focused on him with sudden attention. The Zentari hit it during a supply run to the outer colonies. No warning, no chance to surrender. Just gone. Jinho's voice cracked slightly. "She was only there because she volunteered for the dangerous runs. Said someone had to help the people on the frontier worlds. How long ago? 6 months. That's why I transferred to reconnaissance. I couldn't stand being safe on the inner worlds while people like her were dying out here." Kira reached out with one of her lower hands, gently touching his shoulder. "She sounds like she had a healer's heart." She did. "Just like your mother, I think." Jinho managed a small smile. "She would have liked you, actually. Minji always said the best way to honor the dead was to keep helping the living." Wise words. "Yeah, well, she was always smarter than me." Jinho looked at Kira, seeing his own grief reflected in her silver eyes. "Maybe that's why we found each other. Two people trying to figure out how to keep going after losing everything." Kira squeezed his shoulder gently. "Maybe we don't have to figure it out alone anymore." Outside, the rain began to slow, and for the first time in months, Jinho felt like maybe there was still hope for tomorrow. "Easy now," Kira said softly, as Jinho took his first shaky steps in over a week. Her lower hands hovered near his waist, ready to catch him if he stumbled, while her upper arms remained relaxed at her sides. Jinho gritted his teeth against the sharp pain in his ribs and forced himself to take another step. "I feel like a newborn." "Calf," he muttered in frustration. "Calves learn to run eventually," Kira replied with what he was beginning to recognize as her version of humor, dry and understated. "Besides, you're doing better than I expected. Most humans would still be lying down crying." "Most humans probably wouldn't have survived the crash in the first place," Jinho admitted, pausing to catch his breath. As he did, he watched Kira move around him with fluid grace, despite her enormous size. Each step was perfectly balanced, her feet finding the quietest spots on the rocky cave floor without her even looking down. "How do you do that?" he asked. "Do what?" "Move like that. You're 12 feet tall and probably weigh more than my entire shuttle, but you barely make a sound." Kira tilted her head, considering. "Training. From childhood, we learn to control our bodies completely. It's part of combat meditation." Combat meditation, mental discipline, physical awareness, the ability to be completely present in the moment. She demonstrated by moving through a series of slow-flowing movements that looked like a cross between martial arts and dance. Your mind cannot be clouded by fear or anger when lives depend on your actions. Jinho found himself mesmerized by the display. Despite the confined space of the cave, Kira's movements flowed seamlessly from one position to another, her forearms creating complex patterns that somehow looked perfectly natural. "Could you teach me?" he asked impulsively. Kira stopped mid-movement and looked at him with surprise. "You want to learn Thane combat techniques?" Well, not the combat part necessarily, but the meditation, the body awareness. It might help with my recovery. After a moment's hesitation, Kira nodded. "Sit first. We start with breathing." Over the following days, their routine evolved. Mornings were for physical therapy, Jinho slowly regaining his strength, while Kira guided him through basic Thane meditation exercises. Afternoons were for conversation, and Jinho began to appreciate just how intelligent his rescuer truly was. "Your people's battle formations are interesting," Kira said one day as they sat near the cave entrance, watching the jungle. Jinho had been describing human military tactics to help pass the time. "Interesting how? Efficient but rigid. You plan for specific scenarios and execute them well, but what happens when the enemy does something unexpected?" Jinho considered this. "We adapt, call it improvisation. But improvisation takes time. In those few seconds of confusion, warriors die." Kira picked up a smooth stone and tossed it gently between her hands. "Thane tactics are different. We plan for chaos from the beginning." "What do you mean?" "Every warrior learns to fight independently but also as part of the whole, like a flock of birds changing direction. No single leader gives commands, but everyone moves together through..." "How? Do you say instinct?" "Intuition," Jinho supplied. "Yes, intuition. Developed through years of training together." Jinho found himself genuinely fascinated. "That's actually brilliant. Human commanders spend so much time trying to maintain communication and control that we sometimes forget soldiers need to think for themselves." "And Thane warriors sometimes act too independently," Kira admitted. "Your discipline, your coordination, these are valuable too. Perhaps the best approach combines both methods." These conversations stretched late into the evening, covering everything from military strategy to philosophy to the differences between their cultures. Jinho discovered that Kira had a sharp, analytical mind and an unexpected sense of humor. She seemed genuinely interested in human perspectives, asking thoughtful questions that often made him reconsider things he'd always taken for granted. "You know," he said one evening, as they shared a simple meal of roasted roots and jungle fruits, "when I first saw you, I thought you were going to eat me." Kira made a sound that might have been laughter. "I considered it. You looked very scrawny, though, probably not much meat." Jinho nearly choked on his food. "That's not funny." "I thought it was," Kira said, her silver eyes sparkling with mischief. Looking, at her now, this powerful warrior who had saved his life, taught him her language and shared her deepest sorrows, Jinho realized something had fundamentally changed. She was no longer the alien enemy from his nightmares. She was simply Kira, and somehow that made all the difference. The first sign of trouble came at dawn. Jinho was practicing his morning meditation exercises when Kira suddenly went rigid. Her head tilted toward the cave entrance, like a hunting cat sensing danger. "What is it?" he whispered. "Aircraft," she said quietly, her 4 hands already moving to gather their essential supplies. "Multiple engines, coming from different directions." Jinho's blood ran cold. He'd been missing for nearly 2 weeks now, long enough for search parties to expand their grid pattern and finally reach this remote area. He limped to the cave entrance and peered through the thick jungle canopy, catching glimpses of metal glinting in the morning sunlight. "Human ships?" Kira asked, joining him at the entrance. "Some of them," Jinho said grimly, recognizing the distinctive whine of Coalition scout vessels. "But those deeper engine sounds, those are Zentari heavy transports." They watched in tense silence as the aircraft circled overhead, clearly searching for something. Jinho's crashed shuttle was probably visible from the air by now, its wreckage scattered across a clearing about half a mile from the cave. "They'll find the crash site soon," he said. "Both sides will want to investigate." Kira nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Your people will look for survivors. The Zentari will look for intelligence data from your ship's computers. And when they meet—" Jinho didn't need to finish the sentence. The jungle was about to become a battlefield. "There's something else," Kira said softly. "The Zentari brought hunters." "Hunters?" "Trackers, specialists who can follow scent trails through any terrain." Her silver eyes met his. "They'll find this cave eventually." Jinho felt his chest tighten, and not from his healing ribs. "You need to leave. Get as far away from here as possible before they pick up your scent too." Kira was quiet for a long moment, watching the ships continue their search pattern. "There's a Thane settlement 3 days north of here. I could reach it safely if I left now." "Then go," Jinho said, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. "You've done enough, more than enough." "And leave you here to die?" "I'm a soldier. This is what I signed up for." Kira turned to face him fully, her massive frame blocking most of the cave entrance. "Is it what your sister would want? For you to give up and die in a cave?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Jinho thought of Minji, of her fierce determination to help people even in the most dangerous situations. She would have found a way to fight, to survive, to make a difference. "No," he admitted. "She'd want me to find a way out of this mess. Then we find a way together." "Kira, you don't understand. If your people find out you helped me, that you fought alongside humans against the Zentari, they'll exile me," she finished calmly. "I know." "Then why would you even consider it?" She was quiet for several heartbeats, her lower hands absently, checking the weapons she kept hidden around the cave. "Because 3 years ago raiders killed my family while I was away doing my duty. I've lived with that regret every day since then. This is different. This isn't your responsibility, isn't it?" Kira moved deeper into the cave, beginning to pack supplies into a leather satchel. "You trusted me with your life. You shared your grief, your knowledge, your friendship. That makes you my responsibility now." Jinho watched her work, torn between gratitude and guilt. "Your people's neutrality is a policy made by politicians who never had to watch someone bleed to death in their arms," Kira said firmly. "Some things matter more than politics." The sound of aircraft engines grew louder, and through the canopy they could see landing, lights beginning their descent toward the crash site. "So what's the plan?" Jinho asked. Kira shouldered her pack and handed him a curved blade that looked ancient but well maintained. We get you somewhere safe. Then we make them regret hunting. Both sides, she confirmed. Humans and Zentari have been using this jungle as their private battlefield for too long. Time they learned it already has protectors. As they prepared to leave the cave that had been their sanctuary, Jinho realized something had changed between them. They were no longer just a human and a Thane who had found common ground. They were partners, and that partnership was about to be tested in the most dangerous way possible. Outside, the first shuttles were touching down, and the hunt was beginning. The first patrol found them just after noon. Jinho and Kira had been moving carefully through the dense jungle for hours, avoiding the main search grids while heading toward what Kira claimed was an abandoned research outpost. They were resting in a small clearing when the sound of breaking branches announced they were no longer alone. "Contact!" shouted a voice in the Zentari language. "Two targets, grid 7-7. 3 Zentari soldiers emerged from the tree line, weapons raised. Behind them, Jinho could hear more boots crashing through the undergrowth, at least 6 more troops converging on their position. "Humans, surrender immediately," the lead soldier barked in broken Korean. "You will be processed according to military protocols." Jinho raised his hands slowly, the curved blade Kira had given him hidden behind his back. "I'm injured," he called out. "I need medical attention." "The alien will be terminated as a hostile combatant," the soldier continued, his weapon trained on Kira. That's when everything changed. Kira moved faster than Jinho's eyes could follow. One moment she was standing calmly beside him, the next, she was a blur of motion that seemed to flow like water around the soldier's weapons fire. Her lower hands drew twin curved blades from sheaths he hadn't even noticed, while her upper arms produced what looked like throwing discs with razor edges. The lead soldier managed exactly 3 shots before Kira's blade found his throat. The second soldier got off a wild burst that shredded leaves 20 feet to the left before a throwing disc took him down. The third soldier was already running back toward the jungle when Kira's second disc caught him between the shoulder blades. That entire engagement lasted maybe 10 seconds. "Move," Kira said calmly, already retrieving her weapons. "More are coming." Jinho stared at the fallen soldiers, his mind struggling to process what he'd just witnessed. "How did you—" "They had military-grade weapons, and I have 400. Years of Thane combat training," Kira replied, wiping blood from her blades. "Now move unless you want to see what a full Zentari squad can do." They ran, through thick jungle, across rocky streams, over fallen logs that Kira leaped with impossible grace while practically carrying Jinho over the obstacles his healing body couldn't handle. Behind them, shouts and weapon fire indicated that more soldiers had found their fallen comrades. There, Kira pointed ahead to a concrete structure half hidden by vines and jungle growth. The outpost. The building looked like it had been abandoned for years, but the walls were thick and there was only one entrance. A defensive position if they needed to make another stand. "How many more are out there?" Jinho gasped as they reached the outpost door. "Zentari, maybe 20, your people? Another 15 or so." Kira examined the electronic lock on the door, then simply tore it off with her bare hands. "The question is whether they'll work together or against each other." Inside the outpost was exactly what Jinho had expected. Empty rooms filled with dust and abandoned equipment, but Kira moved through it like she'd been there before, leading him to a communications room where old but functional equipment hummed quietly. "You've been here before," he realized. "My people built this place," Kira said simply. "Back when we were still fighting in the Galactic Wars, it was a monitoring station." Jinho felt another piece of the puzzle click into place. "You've been watching. All this time your people have been watching the war. Watching, learning, waiting to see if the galaxy would destroy itself without our help." Kira activated one of the monitoring screens, showing dozens of red dots moving through the jungle around them. "Looks like we're about to find out." Through the outpost's reinforced windows, they could see soldiers from both armies converging on their position. Human coalition forces from the east, Zentari troops from the west. Both sides probably thought the outpost was empty. "Jinho," Kira said quietly, checking her remaining weapons. "What you saw back there, that was me holding back, being careful not to escalate the conflict." Holding back. Her silver eyes met his, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked truly dangerous. My people withdrew from galactic politics, not because we were weak, but because we were too strong. We decided the galaxy was safer with us watching from the shadows. As the first explosions began to rock the jungle around them, Jinho finally understood just how much humanity had underestimated the species they'd dismissed as neutral. The Thane hadn't withdrawn from the war because they couldn't fight. They'd withdrawn because when they fought, nothing else survived. The battle outside had been raging for 3 hours when Jinho finally managed to establish a secure communication link with Coalition Command. The old Thane equipment was more advanced than anything he'd seen before, cutting through military encryption like it was barely there. "This is Scout 77, requesting priority channel to Command," he said into the ancient but sophisticated headset. Static crackled for several seconds before a familiar voice responded. "Jinho, is that really you? We've been searching for 2 weeks." "Colonel Kim." Jinho felt relief wash over him at hearing his commanding officer's voice. "I'm alive, but we have a situation here that goes way beyond a simple rescue operation. No. We've got 2 armies tearing up the jungle looking for you. What's your status?" Jinho looked across the room at Kira, who was monitoring the tactical displays with professional interest. Outside, the sounds of combat had shifted. The human and Zentari forces had apparently realized they were fighting over the same objective and had turned on each other instead. "Sir, I need to brief you on something that's going to change everything we think we know about this sector," Jinho said carefully. "The Thane aren't neutral bystanders. They're something else entirely." "Explain." "They've been watching us. All of us. Humans, Zentari, everyone. They have technology that makes our best equipment look like toys and combat capabilities that—" Jinho paused, remembering the effortless way Kira had dispatched trained soldiers. "Sir, a single Thane warrior just took out an entire Zentari squad without breaking a sweat." Silence on the other end of the channel. "Sir? Are you saying they're hostile?" "No, sir, that's the point. They could have wiped out both our fleets years ago if they wanted to. Instead, they've been protecting wounded soldiers and staying out of our conflicts." Jinho glanced at Kira again. "I think we've been fighting the wrong war." Colonel Kim's voice was carefully neutral when he responded. "What are you recommending, Scout?" "Diplomatic contact. Real contact, not the surface-level stuff we've been doing. These people could be the allies we need to end this conflict properly. And you think they'd be interested in that?" Jinho looked at Kira, who had been listening to his side of the conversation with growing concern. Her people's reaction to her helping him would not be gentle. "I think at least one of them would be," he said quietly. After ending the call, Jinho found Kira standing at the outpost's main window, watching the distant flashes of weapon fire through the jungle canopy. "They're calling for you, aren't they?" she said without turning around. "A rescue shuttle will be here within the hour." Jinho moved to stand beside her. "But I also spoke to them about you, about your people." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That humanity has been fighting a war without understanding who our real potential allies are." Kira's reflection in the window looked tired. "And what did they say?" "They want to meet with Thane representatives, official diplomatic talks." "That won't happen. My people's council will never approve it, especially after what I've done." She turned to face him. "Helping you was a violation of our neutrality. Fighting alongside humans against the Zentari was an act of war by their standards. So what will you do? Face exile, probably. Find somewhere else to live quietly." She managed a small smile. "It was worth it, though." Jinho had been thinking about this moment for hours, weighing his words carefully. "What if I told you there was another option?" "What kind of option?" "The Coalition is expanding its diplomatic medical corps, teams that provide humanitarian aid in conflict zones while also building relationships with non-aligned species." He took a breath. "They need people with medical training, combat experience, and cultural knowledge of species we've never properly contacted." Kira stared at him. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance to do what you've always done. Heal people and protect the innocent. But on a scale that could actually make a difference." Jinho felt his heart racing. "And I'm asking if you'd want a partner who understands what it's like to lose family to this stupid war." For a long moment, the only sound was the distant rumble of combat outside. Your people would accept a Thane in their military. Not military. Civilian corps. Humanitarian work. Jinho smiled. Besides, after what I've seen you do, I think they'd be crazy not to want you on their side. Kira was quiet, considering. Finally, she nodded slowly. My grandmother always said that when one path closes, the spirits open another. Maybe this is mine. Outside, the sound of approaching coalition shuttles began to drown out the jungle fighting. Their rescue was finally arriving, but for both of them, it felt more like the beginning of something new than the end of their ordeal. 6 months after their escape from the jungle, Jinho stood in the observation deck of the medical ship Harmony's Light, watching Kira perform what the human doctors were calling impossible surgery. Through the reinforced glass, he could see her forearms working with perfect coordination, 2 hands holding delicate instruments, while the other 2 provided support and assistance that would normally require a full surgical team. The patient was a young Zentari soldier who'd been caught in a mine explosion during the recent ceasefire negotiations. Both his legs were mangled, and conventional surgery would have meant amputation. But Kira had developed new techniques that took advantage of her unique anatomy, allowing her to work on multiple injury sites simultaneously while maintaining the kind of precision that human surgeons could only dream of. Incredible, whispered Dr. Park, the ship's chief medical officer, as he joined Jinho at the observation window. She's reconnecting bone, muscle, and nervous tissue all at the same time. That procedure should take 3 separate surgeries over several weeks. How's his prognosis? Jinho asked. If this works, full recovery. He'll walk again, maybe even run. Dr. Park shook his head in amazement. 6 months ago, we would have sent him home in a wheelchair. Jinho smiled, remembering his own recovery in that cave. Kira had always been a gifted healer, but working with human medical technology had unlocked new possibilities neither species had imagined alone. Mission briefing in 10 minutes, came a voice over the ship's intercom. All senior staff to conference. Room Alpha. Jinho made his way through the ship's corridors, noting how smoothly the mixed crew of humans, Thane, and even a few reformed Zentari worked together. It hadn't been easy at first. Centuries of mistrust didn't disappear overnight. But necessity had a way of breaking down barriers, especially when people were focused on saving lives instead of taking them. The conference room was already full when he arrived. Captain Lee, the ship's commanding officer, stood at the holographic display showing their next mission coordinates. We've received a distress call from the mining colony on Zerion 4, she announced. Industrial accident has left over 200 workers trapped underground. Local medical facilities are overwhelmed. What's the complication? Asked Commander Han, the mission coordinator. The tunnels are unstable. Rescue teams can only work in small groups, and there's limited space for medical equipment. Captain Lee looked around the room. It's exactly the kind of situation our new surgical techniques were designed for. Jinho felt the familiar mix of excitement and nervousness that came with every mission. These weren't military operations. They were purely humanitarian efforts, but they were also proving something important to the galaxy's political leaders. That cooperation worked better than conquest. Timeline? He asked. We arrive in 18 hours. Jinho, I need you to coordinate with the local authorities and set up our field operations. Make sure they understand we're not a military force. Understood. After the briefing, Jinho found Kira in her quarters, reviewing medical files for their upcoming patients. She looked up as he entered, her silver eyes bright with anticipation. Challenging. Case? He asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. Very. Deep crush injuries, possible radiation exposure, limited working space. She leaned back, stretching her forearms in a gesture he'd learned meant she was thinking through complex problems. But I think we can help them. We always do, Jinho said with confidence that had been earned through dozens of successful missions. The colony administrator sent a message, Kira continued. He wanted to thank us in advance for coming. Apparently his own daughter was one of the soldiers we treated after the Kepler station incident. Jinho remembered that mission. A terrorist attack that had left victims from 3 different species scattered across a space station. Kira had worked for 16 straight hours, saving lives that conventional medicine would have written off as lost causes. "That's what makes this worthwhile," he said. "Every person we save goes home to tell their family that the old ways of thinking about enemies are wrong." Kira nodded, then looked at him with an expression he'd learned to recognize. She had something important to say. "I received a message from home yesterday," she said quietly. Jinho felt his heart skip. In all their months together, Kira had never heard from her people. He'd assumed they'd completely cut contact after her exile. "My cousin Thara. She's young, just finished her healing training." Kira's voice held a note of wonder. "She wants to join the medical corps. Says what we're doing here is what the Thane were always meant to do, protect and heal, not just withdraw and watch." That's incredible news. There are others too, a whole group of young Thane who think neutrality has become cowardice. She smiled, the expression transforming her entire face. "Maybe we're not just saving individual lives. Maybe we're showing 3 species a better way to live together." As the Harmony's light jumped to hyperspace toward their next mission, Jinho reflected on how much had changed since that day he'd crashed in the jungle. He'd been a soldier then, focused on fighting enemies and winning battles. Now he was part of something bigger, proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or tactics, but its ability to find common ground with anyone willing to build rather than destroy. And beside him, working miracles with 4 steady hands, was the alien warrior who'd become his closest friend and partner in showing the galaxy that understanding was always stronger than conquest. What Jin didn't realize was that Nara's people had biological cycles that would soon complicate their professional relationship in ways neither of them could have anticipated.